Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. Andy Spiteri, Dakota Lasky, Doom Crossing. Gentlemen, it's October. How are we doing now that we are officially in spooky season?
I thought you were about to say spring. I'm like, wow, we're on opposite hemispheres.
Yeah, well, I wish.
Have you gotten any pumpkin, or do they have pumpkin ice lattes in Canada?
Oh, yeah.
Andy? I don't know.
Yeah.
They do? Okay. All right.
Although I don't think they have them at Tim Hortons, though. Maybe they do, but I just never get them.
Okay, so you're not a pumpkin spice latte person.
No, not really. I mean, like, I'm not gonna say like I actively dislike them. I don't know.
Okay.
Never got them. I'd probably drink one if I had one. I don't know.
Well, I am in the fall season, and I have been drinking apple cider and having apple cider donuts and getting into, bringing out my I guess you can't really see it in my room, but out in the apartment, bringing out the decorations and getting to, brought my flannels out and swapping my clothes and getting ready for, it's been nice. Actually, it was almost in the 80s yesterday, but before that, it's been chilly. It's actually been rainy. But yeah, October, fall season's coming around, big games are coming up. And I love this time of year. I love fall. So
October is my favorite month.
Season.
It's good.
Really?
Month. Well, It's got. I mean, in Canada, you got Thanksgiving, you got Halloween, and my birthday. So yeah, it's good.
That's crazy. You have two major holidays, right? Right in October. So why not
triple threat?
Yeah, there you go. What's going on, Doom? How are you?
Pretty good. It's funny we're talking about pumpkin spice. So a couple days ago on Saturday,
bring it right back to that.
Oh yeah, it's very important lore dump. So my family, we had a late birthday dinner. My birthday was at the beginning of the month, but we didn't have time to get together until a couple days ago. We went to a brew house, and they had a special fall season pumpkin spice margarita, which I tried, and it was actually pretty decent. I really liked it. So that's my contribution to the pumpkin spice talk. Otherwise.
There you go.
I finished Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. First time playing the game on Prime Hack. And spoiler, it's a really good game, and I cannot wait to talk about it.
I'm so glad you did that, by the way, because Andy, you played with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck.
I
correct?
did.
And
I did.
Doom, you just revealed that you also played it with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck. And we were just talking before the show, and I was saying, well, we have the definitive episode coming up. I can't be the only one who hasn't replayed the game recently, so I have to replay it. And now I'm wondering, do I have to, no, but not only do I have to replay it, do I have to replay it with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck? I was just going to play it on mouse and keyboard.
No, I think you got to do it the classic. You got to bust out that Skyward Sword Wiimote with Motion Plus, and you got to go through it 2007
I don't know where my Motion Plus adapters even are. I'd have to play it on the original, the remote itself, the original remote itself. But yeah, I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna jump in.
Let me ask you a question real quick. The Motion Plus adapter. So I got like the new Wiimote with like the Motion Plus thing built in. Was there like a separate peripheral?
When it originally came out, it was something that you clicked into the bottom of the remote, and it was like an attachment, like you attach the nunchuck or something like that, or any other of those.
You don't actually need the adapter though. You just need the sensor bar, because this game was before that even came out. It only uses the
It only when I originally played it, I don't even think Wii Motion Plus was the thing when Prime 3 had come out at the time. Or if it was, it wasn't. I didn't have it. I definitely didn't play it with Wii Motion Plus the first time.
It was released the following year, I think, with Wii Sports Resort.
So we're gonna talk about Metroid Prime 4 today, but before we get there, I want to keep talking about this just for a quick sec, because Doom, I got a question for you. So I was playing with I connected my Wiimotes via Bluetooth to my computer. But of course you need a sensor bar in order for it to register anything. So I ordered online a Wiimote, or not a Wii sensor bar with a USB adapter in it that plugged into my computer. But this thing took like 3 weeks to ship from Amazon, which was outrageous. So I was just like, there's got to be something else I can do in the meantime. And I read online that if you just take your Wii, not your Wii U, because that's what I tried first, but your Wii, and just plug it in somewhere and have the sensor bar plugged into that and like put it on the top of your monitor or whatever, it'll work. And it did. I was just like, this is the damnedest thing. Did you do something like that, or do you have something to like capture the Wiimote? How did your configuration look?
I have a dedicated USB sensor bar separate from my Wii one that I've had for a while now. This is the first time I've actually used it though. So and it was for me at least, it was surprisingly easy to set up, and it felt pretty accurate from what I remember. I didn't really have any I guess I'm spoiling some of the gameplay conversations, but I didn't really have any problems with like the motion controls or anything. Everything
No, me
seemed very
neither.
responsive. So, but
Although I will say
yeah.
you can't use save states because that completely that was a big no-no in terms of calibration for me.
I used one save state during the pirate homeworld invasion because I wanted to save all 12 of the boys. So,
Right.
but yeah, besides that, I went completely save stateless.
Well,
Andy,
that's probably good.
by the way, if you didn't have that replacement there or another option, you could have done the classic, which is using candles or a lighter as your replacement for the sensor bar. For anybody who played Brawl back in the day and didn't have the sensor bar for a setup at a tournament, you can just use a lighter. And
What?
I think people have tried to, yeah, because you just need the infrared or whatever from like the light or from the fire, whatever it is, right? So like you
Okay.
can use candles or a lighter. I think some people try to point out like the sun or something and like trying to make that work. But like, yeah, that was a thing at Brawl tournaments because people would show up with setups without a sensor bar, and to get into the game, you needed to use the Wii remote to go through the menu, and you'd use a lighter or lighters.
But there you go. Learn.
So you
learn
would just
something
need
new.
someone to stand behind your monitor all day, or you could, I don't know, tape like 2 torches to your monitor. That could work.
I feel like the cat is messing around here enough. Like maybe it's time she got a
Okay.
job. Start
Well,
contributing.
I'll have to figure it out myself because I think I might have to use the Wii remote and nunchuck because I was planning on using mouse and keyboard, which is, I mean, I can't. I'm so tempted to play more Metroid Prime with mouse and keyboard, but I do feel like, for the sake of the discussion, using the nunchuck and actual remote makes the most sense.
Well, I do. I encourage that, and I do now have, as conveniently as soon as I was done corruption, my USB Wii bar showed up. So if I ever decide to give Other M a go on Dolphin, hey, I'm ready. So yeah,
I think you have to now.
I think I probably will one day. Actually, I think I probably will
Soon.
Yeah, not right away, but maybe that'll
Pretty
be the
soon.
last walkthrough that we ever do for OmegaMetroid.com. It's going to be
The next-
Samus
the
Returns
next
and then
one.
Hunters and then maybe something else. I don't know. But maybe it'll be Metroid Prime 4 before that because I still feel like we're going to get something within the next 6 months. I really feel like we're going to get something about Metroid Prime 4 in the next 6 months. But what we're here to do today is something a little bit different. We've talked about Metroid Prime 4 a lot over, well, I mean, basically since day one of this podcast, which is wild because the podcast is it's going to be 5 years old this year.
No, will it be 5 years old?
Well, did we?
I think
no,
it's
no,
like
no, no.
3 years.
I'm sorry. It's
It'll
going to
be
be 4.
It'll be
It's gonna be
4. Yeah, because we
Yeah.
started in 2020. Yeah.
I kind of confuse sometimes because all 3 of my podcasts started in like February-ish. So like it's like and each of them is a year apart.
We
yes.
put out like the first episode, like that intro episode. I want to say
Mm-hmm.
like literally like the week of or after like quarantine began over here for COVID. Like it was right at
Yeah.
the beginning of COVID of the pandemic. So
Yeah. So we're going to revisit that topic today, but we're going to twist the narrative a little bit here, and we're going to talk about, instead of what we want from Metroid Prime 4, and that list is long, instead of that, what we think is necessary for this game to become a big success. And I feel like there's a few qualifiers that we need to throw out there, just to put some rules of engagement. Number one, obviously, in order for this game to be a success, it needs to have a great marketing campaign and a dedicated marketing campaign and a dedicated push from Nintendo. That goes without saying. So we're not just gonna say that because that's just an obvious one. Second, I think it's fair to say that the game needs to be awesome in order for it to be a success. Metroid has always, the games that aren't necessarily like really, really critically acclaimed tend not to do very well. And I'm looking at Other M, I'm looking at Federation Force as some prime examples. So it needs to be a really good game. And I think that is also obvious. So we don't need to beat up on that particular subject. We can talk about what specifically we want to see with marketing, or what specifically that might, be a gameplay feature that would push Metroid Prime 4 over the edge. I think that's all fair game. But just those small blanket statements like that, yes, of course those things need to happen. We could just acknowledge that and then continue on. So that being said, every person here has a list of some different ideas and different suggestions. and we're gonna get going, and we're gonna do it. Do it one at a time here. So I'm gonna say something. Dak's gonna say something. Doom's gonna say something. We're gonna talk about it, discuss, move on, digest, and get it going that way. So that being said, I think I'm ready to rock. Are you guys?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hold up, I'm good.
Okay, so I'm gonna start us off with something. This is almost cheating a little bit.
Gives all these rules. By the way, I'm gonna break them immediately. Okay, great.
So it's because I feel like this is really, really important, but it's more so important for the success of Metroid as a whole rather than like Metroid Prime 4 specifically. But I think it's important enough that I want to lead off with it. And what I think is really important for this game and future games to be a success is that they develop a really strong engine that is able to quickly be used to develop sequels, because I think the thing that kills Metroid a lot, and you could make this argument about a lot of series, but like you get a game out and then you wait for a long time for the next game to come out. So like I think that Metroid Prime, when it came out, was a great success. Metroid Prime 2 came out really quickly after, which is great. Metroid Prime 3 came out really quickly after, which is great. And then of course you had no Metroid for a long time after that. So I think that one thing that is paramount for Metroid Prime 4 is that they have an engine that it's ready, and it's ready to go, and it's ready to make sequels, and it's ready to keep the momentum rolling and keep it hot and keep it pumping out with great Metroid games. So it's cheating because it's not really specific to Metroid Prime 4, but I do think that like getting those releases out in a consistent manner is very important for the Metroid Prime brand, for the Metroid series, and just going forward. So yeah, that was my number one thought immediately.
Okay. So breaking the rules. Go ahead, Doom.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I agree with like 90% of it. I don't necessarily. I'll try to agree. So I agree in the sense that yes, Metroid needs to keep momentum up. If you have these long stop gaps, you're gonna pause the momentum, and that's going to stop like all this growth. And that doesn't mean that it can't be a success. It just means that you're gonna have to start from square one all over again. Mm-hmm. And that's not what we want. That's not what we want to do. We want Prime 4 to be the start of something beautiful here. Yep. Or technically Metroid Dread even maybe, but that's a whole other topic. Where I disagree though is that I don't think that's necessarily has to do with like engine optimization. I think that's just more so the amount of developers that are working on it or even have interest in it. The reason we didn't see another Metroid Prime game is because Retro was working on the Donkey Kong games, and then afterwards they were working on something else that presumably got canceled before they were given Prime Remastered and Prime 4. Mm-hmm. And then for the 2D Metroid side, after, Other M, Sakamoto wanted to take a break and do other projects, and there wasn't any other studios that were either allocated the project or were even interested in doing Metroid. And so Sakamoto, specifically had to go out and find, Mercury Steam, outside of Nintendo to find people that were interested in doing Metroid when he did want to return to the series. And so I think that more so than anything is kind of the biggest reason why we don't see common Metroid releases, or frankly any releases, in a lot of these lower tiered series up until recently.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was gonna get at. As like the engine thing is just like a symptom of there being a consistent developer. Like the Metroid Prime games were run on that engine because it was Retro's engine for whatever the game they made. Of course they're gonna keep using it. So yeah, I think what really is like the salient point here is that and this is again as you were saying, Andy, for Metroid in general, not Prime 4, the developers we have now, we need them to stay on Metroid for like another decade.
Yes, I think that's the point.
Like, we need like Mercury Steam should be making the next 2D Metroid. Retro Studios should be making the next Prime game after Metroid Prime 4, whatever it is. That's how you get that consistency, is when you have the flagship studio behind the development of the game sticking with it, and they're not flip-flopping. I mean, the 2D Metroid series has flip-flopped from developers like for decades. Metroid Prime has been flip-flopping only because of Retro wanting to go to different games, but then ended up getting roped back in anyway. So yeah, I think that's the overall success is Metroid Prime 4 happens, they should be like, all right, Metroid Prime 5, Retro, you're on it. I'm assuming that whatever game Mercury Steam is working on, whether it's a sequel to Metroid Dread, or it's a Fusion remake, or it's a Super Metroid remake, that it's going to be in the same engine that Dread is in. Why? I don't understand.
Yes.
I don't know why they wouldn't. I don't know why they would create a completely new engine. So
I mean, they've been the same engine since they've been doing the Castlevania games on 3DS.
Right,
so.
exactly, yeah. So like that's just an extrapolation of that we just need to have the same developers on it. And I think that's like something that's kind of cart before the horse, because Metroid Prime 4 needs to be a success to kind of warrant that, to be like, yeah, Retro, work on the next one. It sold, $1 billion or whatever it is. If it doesn't, then there isn't going to be as much of an initiative for them to stay on it, which I hope is not the case. So yeah, I think it's chicken and an egg situation, but I would like to think that we get these developers staying on these games longer than just a single title or two.
I agree.
I'm actually
engine might have been the wrong word to use, but like consistency and ease of development is maybe, and maybe that goes hand in hand with having the same development team working on it. It probably does, but just making sure that this game, the systems that it uses, the engines that it uses, can be repurposed or retooled so that you can keep momentum up and you don't have another. However long it's been. I'm assuming they're building this new engine from the ground up, and maybe not really even using anything that was implemented in Metroid Prime, in the original Metroid Prime trilogy. So, once this is built, I'm hoping that they can go back to it quickly in order to make new Metroid games at a faster rate. Because, say what you will about not rushing and taking your time to get things right. Obviously, incredibly important. But I do think it's important, too, to keep the momentum pushing forward and have new releases and generate new buzz, have people talking. So, yes, is it like I said, it's cheating a little bit because we're assuming, this point is assuming that Metroid Prime 4 is a success. But I do think that that's like a very important aspect for the series moving forward.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm actually pretty optimistic. Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic on Retro staying on. Because I feel like the Retro, because a lot of people, when they look at the current Retro, they, there's a lot of concern, like, 90% or so of, the people who are staffed on Prime 3 are left the company now. It's all new staff. It's not the same Retro. And I understand where those concerns are coming from. I actually think that might work to Retro's advantage, though. And what I'm getting at is that the original Retro Studios staff, when they joined Retro Studios, it wasn't necessarily a Metroid Prime studio. They joined the studio being a Nintendo studio. Obviously, after the first game, that's what they were known for, because that was their only project. But, they weren't known as a Metroid studio. And so by the time you got through Prime 2, and, our friend Kiwi Talks has interviewed a lot of the developers, and, they've talked about this. But after Prime 2, a lot of them were burnt out.
They were primed out, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, they were. A lot of them were burnt out.
They made 3 games in 5 years, and probably had an extensive hand in Hunters. To your point, though, it's like I understand that they're not all the same developers, and that's probably good. But also, like, call me when they miss, right? Like they've never missed yet.
Well, what I'm getting to, though, is that the Retro of today is known as the Metroid Prime studio. Like, that's like Metroid Prime is like one of the greatest games ever made. Like, that game is like heavily revered in gaming culture. Developers adore that game, and so when people are joining Retro, they're going with that mentality that this is a Metroid studio. And obviously now, with Metroid Prime 4, I feel like that, this new talent that's coming in, it reminds me a lot of id Software when they were rebooting what we now know as Doom 2016. A vast majority of that staff never worked on, the original Doom games, but they grew up playing those games and they knew id Software as the Doom studio. And so they were pumped to develop a new game and, bring Doom back to its roots with a modern twist. And I feel like that's what we're getting with the new Retro Studios, and I'm super excited to see how that turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once again, I completely agree with Doom, 100%. Yeah, I mean, they wanted to move off of Prime back then. You wouldn't want to bring that same studio around then. And you would like to think a company that was that successful would try to keep those best practices and what made it successful in the company itself. So when new people are brought in, they also know how to make great games, just like those previous generations of Retro employees did. So, I mean, truthfully, what game developer is the same 20 years ago today, right? I mean, like,
none.
None. Like, so, like, to even be like, oh, like, it rarely does that even happen. Like, a lot of people, it's very, very rare. Yeah, I mean, it's very reminiscent of, like, when people talk, like, oh, I wish Bungie was back on Halo. I'm like, the original Bungie team left Halo to make Destiny. Like they were sick of it. They like they were over it. So like you wouldn't want that original team anyway. You would want the new team, right? Who grew up on those games, whatever. So yeah, 100% agreed there. And I'm hoping that, just like Doom said, that we do get like that kind of new perspective and new life that we wouldn't maybe not have gotten from the original retro, with the new retro that we have today.
I mean, a fresh set of eyes, fresh blood, like fresh ideas. That's powerful when you get that. So yeah. Hopefully, like I said, broke the rules a little bit to start off, but I really do think that's important. So let's talk about actually Metroid Prime 4 specifically. Dak, do you want to take us away?
Yeah, this one I don't have too much to say on it because I feel like this was already kind of part of the rumor mill, which was why I was really excited. And I think my first thing is that the game needs to be really big in scale. Like it needs to be like a large game, both in terms of like how it feels like to be in the game, like a sense of scale, but also the literal size of the game, the amount of time it takes to beat it. It's been a long time since the last Metroid Prime game. I should not beat it in 6 hours, 12 hours, maybe even in 24 hours. I should be pumping some hours into this game after all that time. It should feel different, not just a regular Nintendo game that comes and goes. It should kind of feel like when Breath of the Wild first came out. Like when you see Link overlooking that vast like kingdom, you're like, wow, look at like all that to like. That's how I feel. I don't want it literally like that, but I want that same feeling of like, this is a huge opportunity to explore a huge land, multiple planets, whatever it is, and really get lost in a massive, massive game that has a lot to do in it, right? That like doesn't feel shallow and doesn't feel just empty, like just with a lot of padding. I think a lot of that, like, it'll be easy to compare the Metroid Prime of old to the Metroid Prime of today because Metroid Prime Remastered is now on Switch. So I don't want like the feeling of like, oh, this is only a little bigger than Metroid Prime from 20 years ago. Like it should dwarf, I think, Metroid Prime Remaster in terms of scale, in terms of size of the games, size of the rooms in some cases. Like I want to imagine like what Chozo Ruins could have been, but if it was made today, like 5 or 6 times bigger, not only like the lobby, but the actual size of the area and all the rooms and hallways it has. So I'm glad that came out as part of the rumor mill, because if it's just the average Metroid Prime game, that's one thing, but I think it should be a very large departure in terms of content, in terms of things to do from games from 20 years ago. So I think that's a really important thing, and I'm happy that was part of the rumor mill because it seems like that's what's going to happen.
Yep. I had that on my list.
100% agree with everything you said. Yeah. I have it on my list too. I worded it slightly differently though, so I'm actually going to read
How'd you
off.
word it? Yes.
I'm going to read off what I have here. You're going to see what I mean when I say similar but somewhat different. So, Metroid Prime 4 has to look and ultimately be ambitious. That doesn't mean it needs to completely change up the formula like Breath of the Wild, though. A good example of an ambitious title that still feels at home with its prior entries, in my opinion, is Super Mario Odyssey. At its core, it's still a 3D platformer where Mario uses most of the same moves he's been using since Mario 64. But the larger environments, moon progression, de-emphasis on lives, and most importantly, the capping mechanics make the game feel completely fresh.
Yeah, even if Super Mario Odyssey suits too. That was a big thing for me in Mario Odyssey, is putting on different uniforms and stuff.
That is true. That is true. Even if Super Mario Odyssey isn't your favorite entry in the series, most people can probably agree it's a very high quality entry, and this is along the lines of what I think Metroid Prime 4 should follow.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree.
You should do YouTube essays, by the way. That was when I was listening to that. I was like, all right, next 56 minutes. Where are we going? What's the tail you're taking me on here, man? All right, continue.
All right, what's he cooking?
Yeah, what's he cooking?
So I'm gonna take a page out of your book, Doom, and kind of read, because I had the same thing, but also just slightly little bit different. And mine was like evolve from what Metroid Prime was into something new. And what I mean by that is like have that grander scale, kind of like you said, Dak, like big rooms and not just like, don't limit yourself to just like hallways with, you know what I mean? Like we have 3 games of this, and it's time to go beyond. Or another example, like don't limit yourself to just 4 beams. Like I don't think any of us want to just be switching through our 4 beams again, or our 4 visors, or maybe for that matter our 3 suits. Like maybe it's time, like to your point, Doom, like let's take a look out of Mario Odyssey. Like let's customize a suit. Let's build a suit. Let's make something that we've not done before. Let's have beam combos that actually are functional and useful, and like you can mix and match, and you have more than just like your arbitrary power-ups. And there'd be nothing wrong if Metroid Prime 4 was just another really, really great entry into the Metroid Prime series as we know it. It'd probably be a great game. But I think now kind of like, I think the Breath of the Wild comparison is apt, actually, because I think that game needed to go beyond to be like to reach its full potential and be the game that it was supposed to be. And I think that you can say the same thing about Metroid Prime 4. And I think it needs to kind of drop some of those classic Metroid-isms that are attached to it in order to do that. It needs to be ambitious. It needs to go beyond what we know in Metroid and do something different and challenge itself and not be what we're expecting it to be.
That's your title right there, by the way, Andy, because you hate numbers, Metroid Prime Beyond.
Can I tell you something? I legitimately wrote down, don't call it Metroid Prime 4. Hold on. Here's my reasoning.
Okay. No, go ahead.
Imagine that, let's just assume, right, that a lot of people that are going to play Metroid Prime 4 have never played Metroid Prime before, or maybe they played remastered or whatever. But if you're a new Metroid fan, sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating to see this is the fourth entry in the series. I got to play all these other 3 games. I'm just going to skip it. Now, this is obviously this is on my borderline. It does not necessarily have to be not called Metroid Prime 4, but I do think that just having it Metroid Prime something, I think it makes it just a little bit more accessible. And circumstances, maybe the Prime Trilogy, maybe the other games are out by then. I don't know. But
Andy, let me ask you something. I'm gonna switch verticals here and bring this to a different industry. WrestleMania. They changed the naming scheme for WrestleMania. No. Let me finish.
Okay.
What do you prefer? Do you prefer numbered WrestleManias, or do you prefer WrestleMania Goes Hollywood? WrestleMania New York. What year is WrestleMania Goes Hollywood? Can you tell me what year that is? Can you tell me which one it is? What number it is? You can't.
I can. It's WrestleMania 21.
Is it really?
Yeah, it is. And WrestleMania 39.
That's the answer I was looking for. I forgot 21 was also Go Hollywood.
Boom.
Okay. But you only know that because you've been watching wrestling your whole life.
Sure. I see what you're saying.
So how do random titles make it more accessible for people who don't watch wrestling? Let me throw this a different genre and a different 40 not better than WrestleMania Goes Minnesota,
Yeah, but that's
there's a little bit of prestige to it.
That's an apples to oranges argument. What's a more apt argument is this: it's Halloween season, and Saw 15 is in the theaters, and I'm like, this looks like a gory movie or whatever. But I haven't seen Saw 1, 2, 3, 4, or the rest of them. Maybe I'm not going to go see Saw 15.
If you live in a vacuum,
I watch Saw for the plot.
Exactly. Everyone knows that Saw has the continuity doesn't matter. The plot doesn't. You're there to see people get out of crazy traps.
You're missing the point though. About Saw, it could be any movie, right? It could be. It could be. Do I want to go see, I don't know, Star Wars Episode 6 as my first movie? No.
I mean, a lot of people did, though.
Maybe they did. I'm just saying. I don't think that's an insignificant thing as a potential barrier for people. I really don't.
I think it all depends. I think it all depends on the entry. Just speaking from personal experience, my first Pikmin game was Pikmin 3. And you might be thinking, oh, well, the story doesn't matter in Pikmin. Story doesn't matter. Okay. I don't think the story's going to matter for most people in Prime 4. The lore maybe, but the actual story I think is going to be pretty digestible regardless if you've played the Prime Trilogy or not. I honestly don't think that I don't think the number is going to have much of an effect.
If you're not going to play the game because it says Metroid Prime 4, then you weren't going to play the game anyway. That's not. I don't think that's much of a deciding factor, because if anything, you'll just look at the back of the box, and which will probably fill you in on what you need to know. I don't see the 4 being I have to play the first 3 games. I can't just Armored Core 6 just came out. I know tons of people that have never played an Armored Core game, and I know for a fact they haven't, because you can't even get them anymore because they don't make them anymore because they're on old systems that are obsolete and they don't remake them or put them on PC or whatever. Tons of people got into Armored Core 6 and had no problem not playing all the 15 or 20 other Armored Core games before that. So I think it adds a little bit of prestige, a little bit of intrigue, and hey, what's the worst thing if it encourages people to play the previous game? So
I'm not saying that you guys are wrong, and I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying if there's even a 10% of potential buyers that are turned away by that,
10%?
I don't know. Well, I mean, they don't call it Metroid 5 Dread. They don't call it Metroid 4 Fusion.
But all those games never had numbers after Metroid 2. And Metroid 2 only had that's the only one that has a number in the 2D series. So like why would they call it Metroid 5 Dread?
Why wouldn't they call it Metroid 2.5 Hunters? I mean, I don't know. It's a weird system.
Yeah, but
because the naming conventions are consistent across the series. For the 2D entries, you have Metroid subtitle, or Super, it's subtitle Metroid, but it's the same difference. For the mainline Metroid Prime games, you got Metroid Prime number subtitle, and then for the Metroid Prime spinoffs, you have Metroid Prime subtitle. They're all consistent. If you do Metroid Prime subtitle and it's a mainline entry, you're completely killing that consistency.
Who cares? Who cares? That doesn't matter.
I care.
I don't care if you care. I think it's a non-insignificant thing.
I feel like it's the people that need to care, if anything, on this show. Someone needs to care, Andy. Someone needs to stand up for the naming conventions of this franchise.
Well, first of all, the naming conventions for this franchise are horrible because you just listed 3 different things that should be like Legend of Zelda doesn't have 3 different naming conventions for like 2D and spin-offs and whatever. So I'm not saying I disagree.
Games, we're just analyzing them, all right?
I understand that.
Super Metroid is a name because I know you're trying to get there, but Super Metroid's a great name.
I'm not. I'm off that. I'm not going to bring that up at this day.
No,
I'm just saying I don't think it's an insignificant thing. I think I would like.
Okay, that's fair.
And again, some of these are tough because it's difficult to remove your preference from what you think would actually lead to being successful, right? But I think there's like merit there. I think you guys are dismissing it a little bit. So I think it's not an insignificant insignificant thing.
I will concede that it is a non-insignificant factor. I agree. Okay. But I agree with that, but I think I'm right.
You very well could be. I mean, it's. I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to make or break the success of Metroid Prime 4, but it could be like a small little smidgen factor.
I would be a little bummed because we've been calling it Metroid Prime 4 for so long that then for it to be like Metroid Prime Revolution would be kind of just cheap to me.
It feels like I was so frustrated calling it Breath of the Wild 2 for like so long that I was just like, just give me a name, and that's what I want for this. I'm really tired of calling it Metroid Prime 4. I'd rather. I mean, personally, I'm a subtitle. If it was up to me, it'd be Metroid something. It wouldn't even be Prime.
Well, do you call? I love the name Metroid Prime. It's such a.
I do too.
Name.
It's a sick name, but like for the first game.
Sick.
Yeah. Anyways,
I'm so glad you're not naming these games.
Yeah. We've talked about this before. Let's move on.
You mentioned to move on. You mentioned like the scope of the game in terms of like customization, Andy, in that respect, and that was actually the second point that I had. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna.
Yeah, please.
Wait, Doom, did you do your first point?
Basically had the same one as yours, and I just kind of built off it. So yeah.
All right. So yeah, that's something that I guess is extrapolated from larger scope, but I thought like this game 100% needs replayability beyond higher difficulty levels and 100% finishes. Like it needs more incentive to replay the game beyond it's harder and I get more pictures of Samus in clothing or whatever, or I get an extra trailer that I could just watch on YouTube. So, like back in the day, that was fine, but I think it needs to level up a little bit here.
You didn't have YouTube back when Metroid Prime 3 came out. Good point.
Well, I think you did, but like it wasn't as widespread.
Yeah.
It wasn't as widespread as today. So
let me put it this way: I remember downloading the Metroid Prime 3 trailer, and it took like half an hour to download on my computer back in the day.
I mean, I remember Sakurai famously saying that apparently they didn't do Subspace again because people would just put the cutscenes on YouTube and they could just watch it there. So there's no point in even having a story in the game, which I don't agree with that. But
a rare Sakurai L.
Rare Sakurai L. Otherwise, GOAT. But yeah, I think there needs to be. I mean, sure, I'm down for. I actually want higher. I mean, as much as I don't want it to just be higher difficulty levels, I would actually like a higher difficulty level, like maybe a dread mode for like a prime mode or something. But more specifically, I think you need like new game plus kind of stuff, more rewards for replaying the game, maybe campaign and mission scoring, leaderboards, boss rush mode, like photo mode, stuff like that. Like even maybe like an unlockable co-op, like to help a friend through the game after you played it the first time. I think what really Metroid needs to evolve in is the replayability of the games. Like if you're a dedicated Metroid fan, replaying Metroid is really no problem. We love the gameplay. That's great. For a lot of people who aren't as familiar with it, especially these days where like so much of gaming is based on like, what am I getting? Like, what is my reward for playing this mode or this game? And like, how do I still stay initiated in the game? And people's attention spans are so low. Like, I think you kind of need those incentives to be like, hey, replay the game, and New Game Plus makes it not only harder, but maybe there's new encounters or new bosses or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's leaderboards for boss rush mode. And even besides the reason I just mentioned, that stuff is fun and it makes the game feel more whole and getting more bang for your buck. I'm not just playing a campaign that I might play and then revisit in 3 months. Like I'm going back in to dive in because it changes each time. Not in a roguelike sense, but because there's new things for me to try or new things to get beyond just, a photo gallery and hard mode. So that I would love to see expanded. I would really love for them to kind of get me more value out of like that campaign in terms of what like reasons for me to come back beyond just the gameplay is good and I want to play more of it, which is fine, but there's more to it nowadays, and I would like to see it harness that aspect of gaming that's come about.
I agree.
It's never going to happen, but how cool would it be to finally get an official randomizer from Retro Studios?
Yeah, 100%.
Incredible.
I mean,
it wouldn't happen, but yeah.
It won't happen, but that's that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like you need to break out of the things that I don't want to say hold you down or hold you back, because it's not like the Metroid series is a failure, but like in order to evolve, you need to embrace different things. You need to go where you haven't went before, and a randomizer is just one of the things that they could do that would really, that would be like a huge deal. Like a really engaging, really groundbreaking thing for that game to have. I didn't put it on my list, but I mean that would be massive.
Even down to more like granular customization, like you were saying, suit customization. I think Metroid needs to start letting me customize like my combos together, my beams, my like loadout, whatever it is, like my suit. Like, yeah, I want to get like the big like cool visual upgrades and whatnot, and, like major upgrades that the game gives me on leveling up. But I want to be able to customize way more, because that is another incentive to go back and play the game. Like, oh, I'm going to play it differently this way. Like, yeah. Oh, I played it differently than you did because I favored this weapon, or I liked using this power-up, whatever it is. And that kind of stuff, I still think you can absolutely retain the Metroidvania-ness of it, because you're just adding to the density of potential options. And you got to collect all those different factors to make them all work anyway. So that plays perfectly into Metroid. So I want 100%. That layer of customization. Like, people, especially these days, I mean, we kind of went through an era of like, both games that were like kind of hero shooters, like you kind of like pick a character that's kind of set, but even then there's customization, and then there's other games that go the complete other side where like you can just customize so much of it, like down to like what they're wearing and what the gun has on it itself and all of that. Like that, I think I want to tinker in the garage with Samus's suit. I want to have different gameplay than maybe someone else, and then go back and try their style. Like all that kind of stuff sounds really appealing to me in a Metroid scenario.
I'm going to. Or you go first, Andy.
I was going to a quick point, because I don't do this often, but I'm going to give Metroid Prime Hunters some flowers here. I was playing it a little bit last night, and you know what? That game, for better or worse, like when you switch your beams, it switches how those beams work, and it's not. I will say, like sometimes in Metroid Prime, you switch beams, but it feels a little bit arbitrary. Like you switch it to blast a different color, and you know what I mean. Whereas in Hunters, like you switch your weapon, and it's like all of a sudden I got a sniper rifle. Like that's the kind of thing that I want to see continued and push forward in Prime 4.
Yeah, and that sniper rifle works differently depending on who has it. So there's even an additional layer there, which I feel you could even implement into a single player campaign. This weapon works depending on what other part of your loadout you have. It works in a different way. Like that kind of stuff is really cool. But Doom, what did you have to say?
I'm gonna spoil a tiny part of my Prime 3 definitive ranking talk, because when I was in the Pirate Homeworld, one of the things I absolutely loved about that area was, kind of the espionage atmosphere of that whole area. And, even though we all know Samus is a tank, Samus can blow up everything in her path, no problem, easy peasy. But there's something about me that I just love the feeling of sneaking into a base undetected. I'm like standing right in front of you and you can't see me. And there's so many instances, especially in that opening segment of the Pirate Homeworld, where it's just like that, where you're infiltrating. And that's a scripted sequence, obviously. But I'm wondering, like in this whole customization, I wonder if you could actually customize your playstyle to actually cater more towards those kind of sequences throughout Metroid Prime 4 even.
That's exactly what I mean. Like, if you want to be a guns blazing, go and mess up all the space pirates, you can do that. If you want to be a little bit more sneaky, a little bit more avoid let's just say that stealth is more your game than one-on-one bravado. You could do that as well. Like I feel like that's not asking like a whole lot. Like I feel like that with how Metroidvanias and first-person shooters have evolved in the last 15 years since Metroid Prime 3, I think we could easily bring that kind of stuff to the table.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, I've got another one here. This one's a little bit more practical, and I think that this one is probably going to happen, actually. But I think that in order for Metroid Prime 4 to be as big of a success as it can, it needs to launch either with, like, day one when the Switch 2 launches or very early on. And I say that because I think that you could definitely be successful if it launched like a year later, but like I do think that there's value to like you just picked up a new system. There's only X amount of physical games to buy. Let's make Metroid Prime 4 one of them, and I think that helps. And I think traditionally, like you saw that in the first year of all the Switch games that came out. I mean, maybe it was due to the nature of being the Switch, but like Mario Odyssey, Splatoon, Mario Kart, Zelda. All of those franchises had never seen sales like that, and I think it was, like I said, it could be in part because it was on the Switch itself, could be in part because all those games are fantastic, but I also think this because it launched early as well, and that kind of helped establish those. So, while I think that again, not to rush anything, like launch it when it's ready, but I do think you want to get it out sooner rather than later when the Switch 2 launches, especially if it's going to be your quote unquote tech demo and show what a powerful machine, to show like visually, maybe system wise, like what this machine can actually do, which is easier said than done because we know nothing about the Switch 2, but I think that will be an important factor to its success, and also because then it's literally just out longer for for people to buy. Metroid Dread, when it came out, the Switch's life was half over, and they're going to be moving on to the new console.
More than half over. Arguably.
More than half, I guess. So, but assumedly they're going to be moving on to the next console pretty quickly. So, you don't have all that time to go back, and maybe they bring back Greatest Hits or Nintendo Classics or whatever it's called. The point is that when it comes out, I think it should come out at the start of the Switch's life. I think that's a low key, pretty important factor.
I 100% agree with that. I think within the first year of the Switch's life is when I'm personally expecting the title release, and also when I think it should release as well. Metroid Dread, it's the best-selling game in the series. Incredible success, regardless what anyone else wants to say. But the thing with that game is that, unlike a lot of the other Switch games, is it didn't have the legs. And what I mean by that is it had this huge opening volley of sales, unlike anything the series has ever seen. But then, after that February, it just kind of dipped. Like, that was the peak, and then it just immediately dipped, and it never really recovered since then. And, now the sales numbers are pretty static. Whereas, you look at Luigi's Mansion 3, and, obviously it's not selling nearly as much as it did when it first came out, but every time there's a financial report, there's another 2 point something million copies sold since the last report. Breath of the Wild, I mean, we've talked about this game numerous times, just insane amounts of success. All of these big Switch games, even something like Splatoon 2, I mean, all of these games have legs. They still have enough momentum keeping them going, and that's what Metroid Prime 4 needs. Not just from a sales perspective, but also just to keep the conversation about this game going. Because when people are talking about Metroid, that's when good things happen.
Yeah, it's difficult because like the games you all mentioned, those are all IPs that are like in the zeitgeist. Like they're all gonna be constantly talked about, like regardless. Like Metroid, you don't hear about it unless there's a new game coming out. There's always Mario, there's always Zelda, there's always Pokemon. Like there's always gonna be, it's like that. They'll always have a tail. And I don't like, even Metroid Prime 4, I'm not nearly gonna ever anticipate like it having that same kind of tail unless it has frequent updates coming out. And I didn't put this on my list, but like I would 100% say that like you need 1 to 2 updates or like DLC releases in the first year and a half.
Just so I don't burn it, I did put that on my list, and I think you're going to say exactly what I'm thinking.
Like it needs to have that kind of stuff. It needs to have, like a free update or whatever, like DLC, like additional like missions or post game to have people come back to the game.
Yes.
Realistically, though, I didn't put those on my list because I don't think those are necessary for it to be a success. Bottom line, I think those are things that will make it a big success, And then even bigger is it needs multiplayer, because that's something that keeps people coming back to the game every day. But yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think it's just, difficult kind of ranking up against like a Mario, but it's you want something that is like you go back to it.
I'm not directly comparing it to Mario.
Yeah. But to go back to what you were saying though, I agree it needs to come out near the Switch 2's launch, and particularly I actually do think it needs to be or should be a launch game and not a within a year like launch window game, because I mean, unless it isn't, but I think we've all kind of accepted, or at least like taken for granted or whatever, but like that the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible. So let's say that it is. When the games on the Switch launched, like they didn't have like a library to compete with. Those were the only games you could play on the Switch. So you kind of had to play those. Switch 2 is backwards compatible. If Metroid Prime 4 waits, let's say, a year to come out, not only is it competing with the year's worth of Switch 2 games, it's also competing with the existing Switch library, which means like you have so much variety that Breath of the Wild didn't have to compete against, Mario didn't have to compete against, all that kind of stuff. So
to add on top of that, presumably some of those would also have updates and patches to have Switch 2 like performance.
There's going to be a ton of stuff that's going to be competing against. So I 100% think that Prime 4 really kind of needs to be a launch title so it doesn't kind of get lost in the waves and in the crowd, which I don't necessarily think it would even if it comes out a year later. But I mean, man, just the opportunity it would get to
a
be
year
right
later
next to the... Or like even 6 months later, like the tentpole moment is the console releasing. There's nothing bigger than that. Why not be attached to that? 6 months to a year later, people might have bought all the games they want to play for that year and not be ready to dish out more money.
I think like the sweet spot, if it's not going to be a launch title, do you guys remember when the GameCube came out and like I think it was like a month or two later, like Smash Bros. Melee came out? I think like you could maybe wait like a month or two later, but I think beyond that you're missing your chance a little bit.
Only if you're really doing the holidays, I think. Like if the Switch 2 comes out in September and you release the game in November or December for Christmas, then that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if you're releasing it in February or March and you wait till July or August or September to release it, that doesn't work, I don't think.
I agree. And like look at Metroid. Like there's never really been a game that there's been 2 games that I can think of that got in early on a console's lifespan. 3 games, actually. So Metroid Prime, Metroid, and Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. And Metroid Prime and the original Nestroid did great. They sold a ton of copies because they got, I think, maybe in small part, but at least in part, because they got in early on the console's lifespan. I mean, Metroid Prime 3, unfortunately, just kind of the exception there. It didn't... But I mean, that game couldn't buy a commercial or anything like that either. So that was a different story. But, I mean, you look at all the other games...
Going to your point, actually, Andy, Prime 3 was originally supposed to be a launch title, but it was delayed for extra polish, according to Retro, at least.
It was unfortunately it released along with the original Revolution, I feel like. That was revealed.
It was the first game they didn't necessarily show it off. It was a CG trailer, but like it was the first game they revealed for the console.
It showed it off to me. I was pumped.
I was too.
It was enough for me.
Well, my point is that like you get Super Metroid comes in when the SNES is done. You get Metroid Prime 2. You've only got 2 years left on the GameCube. You get Other M, which I mean obviously had its, and the biggest offender is Samus Returns, which was sent out to die on the 3DS.
I think the biggest issue with Super was that it released close to Donkey Kong Country, and like those visuals were just insanely revolutionary at the time, and just like. Metroid
I think the biggest issue with Super is that the 64 was out in like 18 months after it.
Yeah.
Like
if there was ever going to be a tale with Super Metroid, it wasn't going to happen because the 64 was imminent.
No. So yeah, that's great. I don't even remember who we're on right now, but that's a great point.
I got one because it's one that's kind of because Andy, you cheated.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? Well, everyone gets one, so okay. I'm gonna put a cheat one in because I already kind of put in like needs DLC or whatever, free updates, like whatever. It needs to have an incredible soundtrack because apparently that's no longer a God-given right as a Metroid fan that I get a perfect soundtrack. Apparently,
did we all put this on our list?
Apparently,
I put it on mine.
So this is. So this is more so on like my personal wants list, but I'm totally down to agree here.
I think this
is an objective needs to happen because like Dread. The only reason we saw anything cool like from the Game Awards, for example, for Dread is because it was nominated for best game. It wasn't nominated for best like audio score or like or sound design or whatever it was.
Like what the hell are we gonna play?
And they only played like old Metroid. They didn't play anything from Dread. I don't even think like they played. Like,
they played a theme of Samus.
Yeah, exactly. So they didn't even play anything like. For me, like I haven't listened to an original Metroid soundtrack on YouTube from a new Metroid game in so long that I can just enjoy. Like, there's something like I've talked about it on the show. Full package games where it hits on gameplay, it looks great, the story's awesome, but to be full package to me, it needs to have good music. I need to get like lost in the game. I need to get lost in it when I'm outside of the game. I need to get lost in it when I'm inside the game. Metroid, like, of all games, should have an impeccable soundtrack. Yes. And I have faith in Retro. I don't know this new Retro very well, but I mean I know from Donkey Kong games those have fantastic music. The old Metroid Prime games have fantastic music, but man, we like nothing carries the hype than some good music too. Like that's something that people share around and enjoy and gets appreciated. So I think that like for it to be a full package game, for it to be a success, it's no longer a given. It needs to have an incredible soundtrack. I'm sorry.
Doom, I'm sure you've got something to say here, but I really quick before I hand it over to you, I just want to say, so I've been playing Sea of Stars on Switch.
I was going to ask you about that. I completely forgot, but go ahead.
It's awesome. But one of the things that made me like I've only played it 3 hours, but I'm in love with it. And one of the things that made me fall in love with it is the sound. Like the sound of the game, the music, just the sound effects. It's so like it's unbelievable, and that's the power of music. And like I feel like Dread soundtrack was mediocre, Samus Returns soundtrack was mediocre, Federation Force soundtrack was mediocre, Other M soundtrack was mediocre. You can, I'm a defender of
It's been a while.
Yeah, like Prime 3 even. Like, some people are on the fence about that, but like when's the last time you could say that a Metroid game had like just a blow away soundtrack? It's been a long time. And I think that Metroid was always known for that, and they have to have an awesome soundtrack. I don't think it's just to echo what you said, Dak. I don't think it's like a thing that would be nice. I think it's a thing that has to happen.
It needs to happen. Yeah, Metro needs to get back to that spot.
Hey, I'm absolutely thrilled to put this in the list. Absolutely. Listen, Retro, you brought back David Wise for DK Tropical Freeze, and you produced one of the most beautiful Donkey Kong soundtracks ever made. You gotta bring back the boy, Kenji Yamamoto, for Metroid Prime 4, or at least someone who studied his music and understand what makes Metroid pop. Someone who understands, Hirokazu Tanaka's original influence on the series, and what makes a Metroid soundtrack so unique, what makes it stand out from the pack. I also think I don't want just another Metroid Prime soundtrack, which is going to sound really weird coming from me. Like, obviously, it needs to take elements from that. I would be thrilled to see some of those original sample libraries and synth patches return to make it feel familiar. But, it can't just be another Metroid Prime soundtrack. It can't just be another Metroid Prime 2 soundtrack, despite it being one of my favorites of all time. It has to be somewhat unique. It has to try new thing. Kind of going back to our initial topic that you brought up, Andy, in terms of like it has to cross new barriers. It has to be ambitious. I feel like the soundtrack has to reflect that as well.
Yeah, perfectly said.
100% agree. We need saxophone. Let's think of a very a random instrument and let's throw it in there, ODST style. Screw it.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with a good sax solo.
I love the saxophone. I was not joking.
I have no idea whose turn it is, but Doom, I feel like we haven't got to you in a while, so take it away, my friend.
All right, absolutely. So, we were talking about when this game was going to release on Switch 2, but we haven't really talked about the original Switch, and that's where kind of the theming of this next point comes in. Metroid Prime 4 needs to feel like the glass is half full for Switch owners. Assuming that Metroid Prime 4 is cross-gen, which all three of us are in agreement on at this point, it's probably going to receive enhancements for the Switch 2 version. The Switch 2 version needs to feel like an upgrade of an already quality game, not the default version of a game that is being downported to Switch. Part of this overlaps with marketing, but essentially Nintendo needs to make both versions look like quality products.
I don't know if I agree with you. I don't know if I do. And of course I agree with you in the sense that like if this is going to be a cross-gen game, it should look and it should run great on the Switch, no doubt about it. But I think you want the enhanced. We're assuming, right? Like we're assuming on Switch 2 it's going to be graphically enhanced and all that. I think you want that to be the version where you're just like, this is the version of Metroid Prime 4. This is the best version of this game.
Oh, no, I agree. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the Switch version, it can't look like, Cyberpunk at launch is what I'm saying, basically. You don't want it to look like your average Pokemon game running on the Switch. You want that Switch version to still be a quality game. Not the definitive game, obviously. This game is going to be on the Switch too. This is the definitive way to experience this game. You cannot get this on our previous console, so you should totally buy our new console so that you can play it the way it's meant to be played. But for those of you who, you don't want to spend that money, or let's be real, scalpers are making it impossible for you to buy it at launch, we still have options for our current Switch base, and you're still going to get a very quality AAA Nintendo experience from this.
Can I say something like wild? I think if push came to shove, that Nintendo and Retro, if push came to shove, should emphasize development on making that version of the Switch 2 version of Metroid Prime 4 so awesome that if it can't run on the Switch, it doesn't come out on the Switch. I think that's a hard decision, but I think that's the right decision. And I would do that if I was them.
Yeah, I mean...
Maybe. I'd have to think about that.
Because on one hand, it's like that marketing situation, like Nintendo's always going to want to push people to play Metroid Prime 4 on the Switch 2 because they want to sell Switch 2 consoles. So like the conversation wouldn't be, but for the people who aren't going to spend the money, like they're not going to, they don't,
right.
They're focused on people they want them to spend the money, so they're going to try to get them to. So I think if anything, they're going to emphasize hey, you're missing out on the Switch. You need to get a Switch 2 so you can play it the right way. But I also agree that it should play serviceably and be fine on the original Switch because we want everyone as many people to buy it as possible. I don't agree that it shouldn't come out on the original Switch at all. Even if it
I'm not saying that. I'm saying if push came to shove.
Well, right, but what would that push come to shove be?
I don't know.
Maybe like the game only able to run like in 30 FPS, and it looks like Roblox, like maybe. But even then, why wouldn't you sell that if people are going to buy it? Like if they put out the crappier Switch version and people still buy it, why wouldn't you put it out there? Because it's not like you're going to advertise. You're going to be advertising the nice version on the Switch too. So
right. I don't know what scenario would lead to them not doing that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I think there is it's a very hard line because on the one hand you don't want to you want to reward your loyal fan base who have had a Switch for 6 years, and you don't want to be like, hey, screw you, buddy. Like this game that's coming out on the Switch 2 runs at 10 FPS on your console, and buy the new one or whatever. But at the same time, you do want to encourage people to adopt the new console. So I do think that it's obvious that they should focus on the Switch 2. It should be serviceable on the original Switch. But I think at this point, we're now talking about almost Switch 2 marketing, where I think we could all agree that Nintendo's going to want to push the option that gets people to buy the new console and not, settle for playing the subpar version on the console they already have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. And I'm not advocating that this game should not come out on Switch. I think that they should make it as absolute best as they can and take advantage of everything that the Switch 2 has to offer.
So what you're saying, I think, is the Switch version should not hold back the Switch 2 version.
Correct. Yes. And it's tough because we don't know anything about the Switch 2, other than rumors, right? So maybe the Switch 2 isn't that far advanced from the Switch, and if that's the case, then great. That's awesome. But if the Switch 2 is potentially as powerful as we've heard, and they're really, really optimizing for that, and they can't get... I don't think that they're going to release a shitty version of Metroid Prime 4 on the Switch, right? And, what's the worst option? Releasing a crappy version on the Switch or releasing no version on the Switch and emphasizing Switch 2? I don't know. It's a tough decision.
Yeah.
I think if there's a version being on Switch, I don't think there's any way that the Switch 2 version would be able to take full advantage of that feature set. Just to have something that was able to remain parity, I don't think that would be possible. That being said, though, I don't necessarily. That being said, though, even if it's not taking full advantage, I don't necessarily think that means that we couldn't see a substantial difference. I mean, we've seen tons of like, cross-gen releases on the PS4 and PS5, that still like very much look leagues apart from each other. And so I don't necessarily think that even if Prime 4 isn't taking full advantage of Switch 2, I still could see it being a substantial difference. Prime 5, on the other hand, that one's going all in.
Yeah. It is a rock and a hard place situation, because it's like, I mean, we just spent the earlier part of the episode being like, it needs to be huge, it needs to have this, it has to, and then, but also, how could they do all of that on the original Switch, which, it runs Metroid Prime Remastered beautifully, but Metroid Prime Remastered is a much smaller game. So I get what you're saying, Andy. It's like, is it even possible for the game we're asking for?
Like, I think the more I hear you say it, Doom, the more I kind of disagree with you and say, like, it needs to go all... Metroid Prime 4, not 5. 4 needs to go all in. And maybe a Switch version isn't possible if you do that.
I don't think you're necessarily wrong either. I mean, maybe that is what they need to do, like at the cost of potentially losing out on people who can't check it out because they don't get a Switch 2. And
that's a tough spot, man.
That's tough, because
the problem is because they literally announced this game like at the beginning of the Switch life cycle. And that's kind of been the source of like...
It wasn't the beginning, though. No, it was 2 years into it.
It was at the beginning.
They announced it in 2017.
Here's the thing. It
was a year, okay.
Game delays happen all the time. They happen. And it's not like it was malicious. It's not like if you
only bought... It was barely an announcement, too.
Yeah, it's not like it was a full trailer game. It was like...
we're working on it. Yeah.
So, like, I really hate that argument where it's like, well, they promised on the Switch. You know what? Sometimes life happens.
Here's the thing. I agree. The question isn't whether I agree, though. The question is, does Nintendo agree?
Who knows what those crazy bastards think?
And that exactly. Who the hell knows?
I've got another one.
Yeah, shoot.
Real quick here. Yeah. This one I think is... this was probably my weakest one, but I think it's kind of important. I do think that the game needs to have a simple story, like the original Metroid Primes, but I want it to be not so much of it behind backstory and logs and lore. I would like a little bit more in the active story, in the active present story, but I would like it to be nice, easy to follow, still compelling though. I don't want it to... I want it to be cinematic, but I don't want it to go full other M. I don't want it to be like the original Metroid Prime though, because I would like it to feel like it's advanced a little bit more storytelling wise. I love being able to dig more into the details in lore and scan logs and logbooks and all that stuff, but there is an opportunity to really give us more of a present story, which I feel like these days, like I think I need a little, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, need like characters to attach to and a story to follow, and gameplay is great, but I feel like if it's too close to like the simplicity of the original Metroid Prime story, again, it brings back the comparison of 20 years have gone by and what have we really like kind of changed. I do want it to feel like not even like a reboot of Metroid Prime, but to kind of go back to its roots. But I don't want it to be like so close to its roots that it doesn't feel like things have changed too much. And for me, I would love if we got more of an active story in the game. Give me a more robust story that makes sense and makes me feel like there's much more down the road. Like, a nice self-contained story that can lead to more. So just a nice solid story. Don't go crazy. Don't go super like melodramatic or anything like that. Give me a, cool, awesome, like heroic Samus on an alien planet or alien planets taking out an alien, whatever it is. But give me more of it in the actual active story and not bury so much of it in like text.
I want this to be the Doom 2016 of the Metroid Prime series. That's what I want.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, for people who haven't played Doom 2016, what do you mean by that?
In terms of like, it's a game. Yeah. In terms of like, here's a game that like clearly takes a lot of inspiration from like the classic Doom titles. Not so much Doom 3, which was more of a survival horror game. Still a great game, by the way, but definitely far removed from like the atmosphere of those classic titles. Doom 2016 brings this fresh new perspective, which is also at this time in the FPS like cycle, kind of a fresh take on FPSs since they've kind of moved away from like that boomer shooter Doom clone kind of FPS style. And so you have that, but you also have all these modern conventions and storytelling elements and unlockables and upgrade paths that make the game feel like something wholly original, even though a lot of it's still rooted in traditions of the past. And that's what I want from Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. I think that's like, I agree. I like, especially after playing Metroid Prime 3, like that has an active story, and it's really engaging. There's a lot of great moments.
It's a great story. Yeah, I love I love the story of Prime 3, but also, to be fair, I think that story works a lot more because of what had been set up in the first 2 games. Like, I don't think you could have done that much of an active story. Like, I don't think it would have worked as well if you had that much of an active story in the first Metroid Prime. You would have lost that feeling of isolation and
it's
the
certainly
mystery
the conclusion
of the early.
To
Exactly.
Yeah. I will say this. I had it. This actually kind of builds into your point, but I had it on my list, and it's kind of like the lower end of my list as well. Like, I don't know if you necessarily like need this to be a success, but like, I feel like, the phrase like fake it till you make it, almost. Like, I feel like
I love that phrase.
Yeah, well,
I live my life by that phrase.
That's how I got my degree.
Every week on the Omega Metroid podcast. Yeah.
Love that.
But like, so my thing is like, if you want to be, taken as a legitimate AAA big time release, you need to do big time release AAA things, and that means it's like, okay, no more text when people talk. Like, let's get some voice actors in here. Like, if you want to have scannable lore, that's great, but like, I don't want to stop my gameplay to read a bunch of this stuff. Like, I want like an AI or something like that, like reading while I move. Like,
how great would it be if you could read it, but also you had the option to just turn on text to speech and then just keep going? Yes, 100%.
Exactly. That's it. It's like there's a lot of really, really, really engaging lore in the Metroid Prime series that I think like a lot of us don't really read. You just kind of scan it because you need to, and it fills out your logbook. But like, are you actually listening to it? And I'll go back to the Batman Arkham games, which is coming out on Switch next week, and we did a great Inspired by Metroid on it. But like, that's kind of a good example, and it's an easy thing too. It's like, there's voice logs that you can listen to at any time, and they play while you're moving, and like, it's simple, and it feels, it just adds to the presentation, and it's doing these things that big AAA games do that makes you kind of a big AAA game, like, even like Breath of the Wild and Zelda and Nintendo games in general. Like, it's like, come on, like, let's get some voice acting here. Like, Skyrim in 2011 had countless voice actors in it, and it added to the real world, it added to the atmosphere, it added to the immersion. And I'm not saying that you can't get that by just reading the scans and stuff like that, but like, I think that helps. Or like, if I see Admiral Dane, I don't want to have to read what he says and press A, read what he says, press A. I just want to listen to him and like keep moving in active time. So it's the little things like that I think really contribute to the presentation and how other people perceive Metroid Prime 4.
Say in terms of that scan proposition, I actually think there's a really cool way that you could do the best of both worlds. I think most of the scans are still readable, like kind of your generic scans, like when you're scanning like a random panel in the environment or like a bush or something like that.
Yeah.
But then when you scan like a logbook entry, for example, that also has the AI voice or the audio attached to it as well for those more rare scans, the very important scans.
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. Like those ones that go into your logbook, you can go back at any time. You can either read it or you can play it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like stuff that's important to know or that it's interesting to know. I don't need like to read off the plant life like necessarily, but if it's like a lore relevant thing or like a story relevant thing, 100%. Yeah. And I have my last point here, because this is along the lines of what you're talking about here, Andy, I think is like a modernization of the gameplay, and especially along the lines of like FPS stuff. Like, it needs obviously dual analog controls. I think we're pretty certain we're going to get that, but like, I would even say stuff like being able to run and sprint, or maybe even crouch outside the morph ball, being able to melee, being able to grapple beam without grapple points, like stuff that
mantling,
yeah, like
grabbing.
Exactly, stuff like that. Where like if you've played a modern FPS, you would feel right at home. I think, and this is something that I actually, it's very anecdotal, but I talked to a few of my friends who had played Metroid Prime Remastered, and they liked the game, but they were like, it feels archaic. Like, I know this game came out 20 years ago. And that's totally fine. And I don't think Metroid Prime Remastered needed to change, because it is what it was, and it was meant to be like the original. But Metroid Prime 4 should not be playing like Metroid Prime the original. Like, it shouldn't lose what makes Metroid Prime 4 what it is. I don't think people need to be blazing through the game and super high focus on combat, though I would like a little more of a focus on combat, to be fair. But I do think that you should be able to take the experience in FPS today, implement it into Metroid, and then put on the Metroid bells and whistles and make it unique in that way. I should be able to bring that kind of muscle memory over, so to speak. And certainly for a game like Metroid Prime 4, if it feels like it doesn't have a lot of those things, it's going to feel archaic, just like older Metroid Prime games. And I would like it to be a game where I feel right at home coming from playing Halo or Destiny or Apex or Call of Duty, whatever it is, because there are a lot of similarities, and as there should be, because they're in the same genre. And having all of those things makes it feel like an evolution of the gameplay. Like, I would love to be able to hide behind cover and mantle over stuff and grab stuff and just grapple or on a piece of rock and not have to have a grapple point there and all that kind of stuff. And that is more immersive to me because it feels more natural. It doesn't feel like I'm so restricted because it's a game. I have the right restrictions that feel natural. So that was something, I think that was my fifth point. I think that's going to be very important, especially for new players. I mean, there's a lot of people who, even if they played Metroid Dread, this is going to probably be their first Metroid game or their second Metroid game. Having it feel modern is a huge part of the game being adopted by a lot of people, I think.
There was a period in first-person shooters about 5 or 6 years ago that I like to refer to as the advanced movement era. You had all these FPSs, so a lot of them even in established franchises that went futuristic, and with that futurism came all these advanced movement mechanics. Wall running was like one of the big ones. That was like one of the big fads.
Titanfall 2.
Yeah, Titanfall 2, Black Ops did it. A bunch
Warfare,
of them.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Wall running would be sick in a Metroid Prime game, but continue.
And it was big for a few years, and then everyone got sick of it because these advanced mechanics became oversaturated, and like all the big FPSs coming out, so they died fast, and we haven't really seen wall running since then, except I think Apex. I've never played Apex before. Is wall running in Apex?
Actually, I haven't. I used to play Apex a little bit. I don't know if I think there might be a champ that like can. Like specifically wall run. I don't know if all of them can, because I know one has like a grapple and the other ones don't. But
okay,
yeah.
But point is, like, stuff like the wall run or like these other like futuristic advanced mechanics, you don't really see that anymore. I think Metroid Prime 4 is like the perfect time to bring all this stuff back, and it makes sense in a game like Metroid that's so heavily based in sci-fi. It's a type of series where you can get away with stuff like that, and I think combining that with Samus's already pre-established abilities, there is so much potential to have some really cool movement mechanics. So personally, at least when it comes to 2D Metroid, that to me is what defines like the best 2D Metroids, is stellar movement. Again, stuff like Metroid Dread, Zero Mission, stuff where like Samus is just the most fun thing on the planet to control.
Yeah.
The Prime series for me is more of an immersive sim for me than a movement sim, but what if we could get the best of both worlds? Have that immersive sim where you have the option to slow down to observe the environment, but when you do want to speed through or when you're in a combat section, you can pull off all of these sick tricks that you just can't do in any other shooter.
Yeah, like I should be able to like crouch behind cover and mantle over stuff, or I should be able to run in and dash in and grapple off something and run and slide and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, they brought the slide to 2D Metroid, bring it to 3D Metroid. Yeah, I mean, thinking about like, why does Samus have to do like a big like jump? She should be able to like Halo 5 boost and whatnot and all that kind of stuff with her jetpacks. Yeah, like that. I don't need it to go full Twitch shooter, like full like crazy like Call of Duty.
We don't need CS:GO Prime 4.
Well, CS:GO is not Twitch. That's like tactical shooter. That's not moving at all. That I don't want either. I don't want to hold angles in Metroid for sure. As much as I love holding a good angle. I don't need to Rainbow Six it or anything like that. But yeah, I would like it to feel more modern. I would like, again, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Andy, about like, I want to be able to play it in different ways. And you can do that when you modernize the controls a little bit. In Metroid Prime, like, you can only move at one speed. You can only really approach things, and you can't really stealth, like, kind of, but not really. And when you give more options in a modernized FPS, you can do all those kinds of things, and it would feel a lot more immersive, like Doom was saying, because you feel like you're in full control and not, like, limited. So, yeah.
I agree with that. I think... I mean, listen, look at Metroid Dread. I think that game really showed us how important momentum and movement
Flash
is.
shift in Prime.
Yeah, like,
come on.
Like I think like this isn't a key to Metroid Prime's Metroid Prime 4's success necessarily, but like they got to find a way to make the speed boost work. They got to find a way to make the screw attack work. They got to find a way to make wall jumping work better. Like, and I think they can do it. And all those sound like really good to me. Like I again, like it's just like break free of the things that you think Metroid Prime is and does. Keep the essence of it, but like move forward, like a Breath of the Wild evolution. For and for better or worse, and that game did lose some of what like the classic Zelda games had, but I think the trade-off was fair and took the series to its biggest game ever. So yeah, I think that sounds good. I have one more. This would undoubtedly lead to the game's success, but I feel not very confident that this would ever happen. But package this game with a Switch 2. Like, if it's a launch title, bundle it. Like, bundle it so that if you're buying a Switch 2, hey, you're also buying Metroid Prime 4. Or at the very least, like go like first hunt on it, right? Like get that demo but have the game available to buy like right then and right there. Or like, maybe if let's just throw days out there, but if the Switch 2 releases in September and Metroid Prime 4 is a launch title, have a Metroid Prime 4 themed Switch 2 bundle at Christmas. Like, it would be so easy to do, and like I can't think of the last big bundle that wasn't like a gimmick game or like a Mario game.
Zelda, right? Yeah.
Was Animal Crossing had a bundle.
Zelda had a Breath of the Wild. Oh wait, no, never mind. I'm sorry.
Animal Crossing sounds right though. Yeah.
Yeah,
Animal Crossing. I know it had its own Switch, but it's like, hey, Switch 2 just came out. If you want to buy the Switch 2, like, I'm talking like just a regular Switch 2, not even a theme one, but like on day one, like, here's the Switch 2, and here's the model, and here's another model of Switch 2. It's $80 more, and it comes with Metroid Prime 4, and you're good to go for your first game.
I'll go one step further. I mean, again, I think now we're going beyond like what would be necessary, but give me a Metroid Prime 4 themed Switch. I want a Metroid Prime 4 edition.
Yeah. Well,
Switch Pro or Switch 2 or Switch Prime. I want the Switch Prime.
That's what I'm saying. That's like if you release in September, November comes around, you have your bundle and it's Metroid themed, like bada boom, bada bing. I mean, that's a win-win.
Nintendo Switch Prime. I kind of like that name.
That would have been worse. Actually, that would actually be kind of cool.
Come on, because it kind of sounds like Twitch Prime, which also is a thing and also works. Switch Prime. If that's the thing, by the way, if that's what they call it. I called it, is all I'm saying.
Somebody
Dak was the first one there.
I can't remember. Somebody threw out the Switch Advance, which I don't mind that name either. I think that's kind of got a little
Switch SP.
Hey.
The new Nintendo Switch.
Now we're cooking.
But like now we're
like I think a bundle would undoubtedly help the game be a success. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, Nintendo used to do bundles. Nintendo used to do like bundles for like new releases, like all the the GameCube was like known back in the day for having like insane, including Metroid Prime bundles. I think they had like they had a bundle with like Metroid Prime and then the demo disc of Metroid Prime 2, back when that game was coming out. I remember the DS. There was like a Mario Kart DS bundle with like a bright red DS before like the DS Lite came out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Didn't it have the racing stripe on it from his like?
Yeah.
Yes,
I think it was like a sticker that you could put on. That was before they actually like imprinted like the limited 3D models. And like nowadays, like you get the limited edition consoles, but you rarely get the bundles. And if you do, it's usually for games that are released later on. Like again, like Mario Kart. Like you get the Mario Kart bundle every Black Friday, which is was like within the first couple months of the Switch launching. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's my list. Do you got anything else?
Few more. They're all like pretty no duh obvious ones. I don't have any other bombs to drop.
Okay.
Metroid Prime 4 has quick. Yeah. Metroid Prime 4 has to review exceptionally well. That does not mean it has to be the best game in the series or even the best of the mainline Metroid Prime titles, but it has to stand shoulder to shoulder with the highlights of everything else released that year. It has to be in the conversation when people are talking about like the summary of the year. In a positive way, obviously.
It needs to be. Jeff needs to talk about it at the Game Awards.
Yes.
That's what you're saying. It needs to be at the Game Awards.
He's got to throw on his graphic tee, his blazer. He's not going to wear any socks, and he's going to be talking about what a great game Metroid Prime 4 is. I love Jeff.
I'm a Jeff fan.
I am too.
No. Andy will like this. We need Hideo Kojima to name drop
my
Metroid
God.
Prime 4.
This
Andy
guy-
would lose his mind.
It would sell 10 million copies if Kojima just made one tweet and
Honestly,
say this is cool.
hey, not. But if if the conversation was about what we need this game to sell 10 million copies of or something, my two are it needs some dank multiplayer, and attach Kojima to it or something, or something crazy.
Well, I don't necessarily mean he develops the
something.
game. I mean like like Kojima, he talks about like the movies that he's seeing in the games he's playing. If he makes a tweet,
he's in the game.
He photo scanned every single character himself into the game, including Jeff Keighley.
Kojima talking about it would be hype. The Kojima bump.
Yeah,
that's what we need. The Kojima bump.
Death Stranding 2 is going to be sick, by the way.
Is it? Because I didn't play the first one, and it looks like a walking simulator.
Death Stranding, the first one, is insane. It's I can't say it's always fun, but it's always insane, which is great. If that makes sense.
Isn't there a bad guy in the game called like Evil Bad Man or something?
No, you're thinking of Die Hard Man, who's like
there we go.
He's kind of
that's what I'm talking about.
He's actually sick in the game. He's like kind of like your Colonel Campbell, if you will. Okay. But anyways, Doom, what else do you got?
Yeah, I have Death Stranding on Steam from the Humble Bundle, but I'll eventually get to it eventually. Anyways, more obvious stuff. The general public needs to be aware that the game exists. It has to be a part of the positive general conversation within gaming circles. How can Nintendo put this title into the minds of the masses without risking overexposure? Which again, is basically just good marketing, just kind of what we all agree on, kind of a general but people need it. Yeah.
Yes. I wanted to talk about this. This was one of my side points here because Andy, you were like, it needs good marketing, blah blah. But it needs specific marketing. I think it needs top of funnel marketing, which is like your top most awareness possible. Because here's the thing, right? Like Metroid Prime is like everyone knows it's sick, but like it's one of those things where like it was really good 20 years ago. Like the diehard fans know about it. Like there are new generations of gamers that have never heard of Metroid Prime, no matter how good it is. So like we can't be like, yeah, it'll sell itself. It won't if people don't know what it is. It will, I think, sell itself bottom funnel once people know what it is. But if they don't ever know, it won't ever sell. So like it is a game that sells itself once you put it in front of people. So I would, if I were marketing it, I would be like full top of funnel, like full awareness, putting it everywhere as you could, as often as you can, and then let people make their own opinions once they check it out. I wouldn't be like attaching celebrities to it, maybe a little bit of influencer stuff, but like just because that's like easy.
Like
but
Metroid.
Yeah, exactly.
I would. I'd be like,
right. I'd be like, yeah.
Hey, Amaranth, there you go. Play Metroid Prime 4.
But like, I don't think you would need to do like that kind of middle or lower funnel stuff. I think you'd be doing top of funnel where you're just like trying to get the name out there. Remind people of what Metroid Prime is at all, and make it feel like a big deal because you plaster it everywhere. Put like that's one of those things where like it's cool if you put it on like the side of one of those buses in England or a billboard, or you have like a really huge promo like you're doing commercials, like that kind of stuff. Like that's the kind of like it needs to be everywhere. You look somewhere, like it needs to feel like it's the biggest release at the time. So that's the kind of marketing I'd be doing.
Gate went from this niche kind of RPG to like the biggest phenomenon of 2023 just because people actually know about it now. People are constantly talking about it every day on social media. And obviously I don't think Prime 4 is going to reach that same level of hype. Baldur's Gate 3 kind of got lucky in that respect, but like it has to have that same kind of effect where just like people need to know about it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say though that Baldur's Gate was really like word of mouth too. Like it was a huge word of mouth stuff. Like I honestly did not see a lot of
it's going to win game
advertising
of the year, like this year.
For it. I didn't see a lot of it could very well. I think it probably will. Yeah. It was one of those things I didn't hear about it until it came out. And then there was a big push for it. But it's also Dungeons and Dragons related. It's kind of easy to like attach that to the larger like thing it's based off of. But yeah.
My ultimate point though is like it's because people knew about it. Like obviously it didn't have a marketing camp. Prime 4 is going to have a bigger marketing campaign than Baldur's Gate 3 did. But like the reason Baldur's Gate 3 is as popular is because people actually know about it. That's the big thing. People have to know Prime 4 is a game that exists that they can play right now in the future.
And By the way, I will say this anecdotally. I've never played Baldur's Gate before, but when I heard there was a Baldur's Gate 3, I was like, there's a third one. It must be pretty good if they've made 3 already. It's not Baldur's Gate Revolution. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Is it good? Is it not? Is this the 14th game? The 15th? I don't know. But Baldur's Gate 3, I was like, that's a solid number 3. That's a prime
I don't know about that.
there.
I don't know about that Diablo 4, but Diablo Immortal though, that's a subtitle. That's the one that I need to jump on.
I don't know why you guys think that's so ridiculous. Yeah, Diablo 4 makes me not want to play it because I'm like, I haven't played Diablo 1, 2, or 3. Diablo Immortal, I don't know what the hell this is. I'll try it, sure.
How is it?
That's the meme mobile game, Andy. It was.
Yeah, that's what
I know what Diablo Immortal is. I'm saying, like,
hey, if you have a phone, you can play it.
True.
Indeed.
Yeah,
many people are saying this.
Ultimately, I think we can agree that we need Metroid Prime 4 to be good. In order for it to be
it needs to be marketed
a successful
well.
game.
Clearly,
yeah.
Yes.
Andy, real quick before we sign off here, Sea of Stars, man, I really want to jump into this game. What are your overall thoughts on the game so far?
Okay, so
I know that completely off topic, but I really enjoyed the demo.
Yeah, so I want to preface this with I'm 3 hours in, so I have a lot of game to go, but I think I can comfortably say that if you like RPGs, you'll love this game. And if you don't like RPGs, I think you still will, because I think like even people that don't necessarily love JRPGs, I think most of them would say, I played Chrono Trigger and it's really good. And this has a lot of Chrono Trigger vibes to it, like a lot. As you probably could tell just by playing the demo, like the battle system is very similar. You don't go into a separate screen, but you do go into a battle formation. There's combo attacks. Yeah, it's awesome. It's a little bit more interactive than I thought at first. The battling system, it's kind of got a little bit of Paper Mario in it, where if you press the button at the right time, you'll do extra damage, and if you press it at the right time, you'll defend a little bit more. You can absorb elements to add a little oomph to your attack. You could stack that element absorption. So like everything's really simple, but like there's actually like it's pretty complex. A lot of the different things that you can do. The story so far is very charming. It's almost got like some, what's a good comparable? Like some Final Fantasy X vibes to it a little bit almost. Or it's a very cool story. The music is fantastic. It's like Doom, you would love this game's music. It sounds just like, there's probably a word for this that I don't know, but like it's like a modern nostalgic kind of what's that Dua Lipa album? Future nostalgic. That's what it feels like to me.
I've never listened to Dua Lipa.
It feels like Dua Lipa. That's a great way. That's a great review quote. That's a great box quote.
You ever listened to Dua Lipa? Are you serious?
You've heard Dua Lipa.
Yeah,
like you may not
I know who Dua Lipa is.
I'm sure you've probably in passing heard a Dua
man.
Lipa song.
I can't say I love Dua Lipa, but her singles are good. Anyways, but she has an album called Future Nostalgia, where that's what the soundtrack to me is just like. It's like a modernized version of something I would have heard in the past. I can't recommend this game enough. It's awesome.
It's like I don't know if there's a word for it, but it's like nostalgic for something that you like didn't happen in the past, but feels like it would have. Is that kind of like what you're,
I mean, maybe, but like. I'm probably actually overthinking it, because I did experience, like I played Chrono Trigger back in the day, and it feels very much like an SNES style soundtrack, but like just really like
that's kind of what I'm saying. It kind of feels like it gives the nostalgia of like as if it was released back then, that you did grow up on it, but you didn't, kind of feels like
it's SNES soundtrack.
Yeah. It's so awesome, man. That's like I'm really loving it so far, and I would absolutely like encourage it to anybody. This might be my game of the year. I've played 3 hours of it. Like it's.
I gotta jump in. I had to ask that real quick. Before we wrap entirely, bringing it back to Metroid, we've got some. Well, first of all, by the way, you mentioned the speed booster. Destiny 2 has it. Retro, please play that game, and then you can implement the speed booster. Very great. Second, we have some sick episodes coming up for the show.
We do.
That are Metroid related that I'm very excited about. So. Yeah,
one of them that we discussed earlier, we're going to be doing a Metroid Prime 3 definitive rank. It's been a while since we definitively ranked anything. I think it's been a long time. So I'm really excited.
I was checking the YouTube channel. We did you guys did Other M. I was busy doing Capstone.
You said you were somewhere. You're just like, I'm not reviewing Other M. We got a new sub series start. We're gonna be looking at some of the more lore centric, factions and happenings in the Metroid series, and that's coming next week actually. So that's gonna be really exciting. And then lots of other good stuff coming down the pipe here. So lots of I'm excited about the slate that we have for the next couple weeks.
You know what I also have, by the way, for you, another thing to anticipate, just thinking about it, we are approaching what I believe would have to be the window to do our Omega Metroid versus Zelda Cast 3 trivia showdown, because the last one was in January.
I was just thinking about that earlier, actually.
And we it's coming up on January again, so I don't know.
I was thinking of some different gimmicks and some different tricks. Actually, I started thinking about this because I was playing Samus Returns and noticed, in fact, that there are indeed 4 Omega Metroids and not 3, and somebody lit me up for getting that wrong last year. But whatever. But yeah,
I hope you're thinking about better questions this time.
I'm thinking of a whole new format, actually, that I'm going to keep close to the chest here. But you guys, you're going to be in for it. Let me tell you that.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm excited
too.
I'm excited. All right, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, I think we came up with a lot of good ideas for what could potentially make Metroid Prime 4 successful, and a few of them I think that are slam dunks that need to happen for Metroid Prime 4 to be successful. Of course, we would love to know what you think. Let us know over on Discord. Let us know over on Twitter. Let us know over... You know what? We're on Blue Sky now. All of us are on Blue Sky, and Omega Metroid is on Blue Sky as well. Like I said last week, it kind of looks more and more like it might be the heir apparent to Twitter. So, I mean, I don't know. Give us a follow over there. Not super active over there yet, but we're getting there. So, yeah. Anyways, give us a follow rather over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spiteri316, at DaxCity _, and at Doominal Cross. Check out OmegaMetroid.com. We have tons and tons and tons of new walkthroughs up on the site. So if you've been itching to play Metroid Prime 3 after hearing us talk about it these last couple weeks, guess what? There's a walkthrough for you there. We got the great Metroid area ranking that's rolling on. We just crowned a new #1 overall area, which is, I don't want to give it away, but it's, I don't know, maybe one that nobody was expecting. Controversial area in the series. So that's going on over on Patreon. And, of course, we want you to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Like, subscribe, review, rate, comment, all that good stuff. We love it all. We appreciate it all. And that's going to do it for us. But we're going to be back next week. We're going to be talking space pirates. And I'm stoked about that. So until then, everybody, take care.